Jeremy, thank you for your time. Big fan for many years. I put that up front because this isn't one of those gotcha interviews. This is one where the compliments are not followed with but. So that said, good day for you so far, aside from having to do media.
Right on. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's going well, man.
And Tastes Like Gold, the new album that's still 2 weeks or so from coming out. So I asked AJ when it was finished, and it's not finished that long ago, but when did you approve the master of it?
Oh man, when did we master this? We mastered here in Nashville with a guy, Pete Lyman, who's awesome. And I can't remember. Wasn't that long ago though.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you do interviews and you ask, when did you finish your album? People actually haven't finished the album. It's just like a race to the second to get that mastering job. And then other people, oh, the album's been done 3 years. We were just waiting for the right deal. And you have Round Hill Music putting this album out. Did you know outright that Round Hill was the label?
We had a pretty good idea. We've been talking with Round Hill for, actually, we've been talking with them for a couple of years about publishing and record label stuff and all that. And yeah, I mean, they're just a great group of people and just big music fans over there. And it's been a great fit so far, you know, and it's a relatively new label. So, you know, as far as a record label goes, they're relatively new, you know, even though they own tons and tons of great records and catalogs and things. This is going to be kind of a new adventure for all of us, you know, so hopefully we put each other on the map, if you will, as a, you know, they brought in some great people. So our team over there is really, really great. But yeah, I mean, once we started making the record, we had already done our deal with Round Hill and we were turning songs in as we went. And, but I mean, I think realistically we were in the mastering room like a couple months, maybe 3 months ago. So not that long.
When it comes to labels, something that I really appreciate that Lit did was when you were on RCA, you had the Dirty Martini label imprint and you signed a couple of your friends, and it didn't go as great as everyone had hoped, but it really showed that Lit had a community, it had a brand, and that you weren't competing, that you were friends with other musicians. A lot of musicians don't associate with other musicians. Does that peer community kind of mindset go back to the Gazzari's days? Is that where that comes from?
Well, no, I mean, it's interesting because we have a lot of that has become much more commonplace nowadays than back then in 99, 2000, you know, even 98, we had that Dirty Martini sort of imprint associated with us. And we, you know, it took us 10 years to get a record deal and to have a shot at it. Right. And so we felt that there were other bands out there that deserved at least a shot, you know, and it turned out the first band, Handsome Devil, that I signed.
I love that album, by the way.
It's a really great record, man. Yeah.
Stands the test of time. Danny Walker knew what he was doing.
Yeah. I mean, we had it just so happened that I was a huge Danny Walker fan, a huge Wank fan. And he was the first signing to Dirty Martini, but I was getting like boxes and boxes and boxes of submissions, demos, and, you know, packages and pictures and all that. And I would come home from the road and I had a little office room set up in the back of the house. And I would come home and I'd have like 2 days off and I would literally sit there, you know, with 400 envelopes to go through. And, you know, it got to the point where, I mean, I felt I was kind of like an A&R guy, you know, I was opening up stuff and I would get envelopes, and if they just looked like crap, like the band wasn't serious, I would just toss it. Right. And then if it looked good, then I'd open that, and if that was cool, then I'd listen to it. And usually I wouldn't get past like 20 seconds of it, and then I'd toss that. And there were, I think out of probably a few hundred, there was maybe a dozen that I was like keeping my eye on. And then it just so happened that Danny Walker, we ran into each other in Reno at a show, and he had told me he had a bunch of songs he was working on. I said, well, I got a label I'm working on. And he sent me some demos and probably 30 or 40 songs. And I was like, dude, we got to do this. he didn't have a band yet or a name yet or anything. It was just Danny Walker and a bunch of songs. Yeah.
Wow. So it was a solo project in a way that people didn't realize it was a solo project.
Well, Danny was the writer in Wank, and he was kind of the driving force of that band. And so yeah, he was just doing what he does. He just cranks out great songs. But they had a real shot. Same with Color Red. Color Red, a friend of ours was kind of managing them, and I went and saw him in a storage shed out in Riverside, California. And it was, hot as shit and loud as shit. And they blew me away. But both of those bands really had a shot. What it wasn't so much RCA's fault as it was just the world around us. Like Handsome Devil was getting attention on the radio, and their song was getting played, and they were out on tour. And then 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And, 9/11 derailed our record. Atomic got screwed on that. Not to say that nothing compares to what happened on 9/11, obviously, but
you're talking about, I'm sorry to cut you off there. There's a lot of albums that were coming out on 9/11. Like there was a Jamiroquai album. There was a Power Man 5000 album called Are You Ready for the Destruction of the World or something like that. There was a lot of stuff that was going to happen that month and would have changed music. I remember seeing Lit in support of Atomic at the Bowery Ballroom at that point in time here in New York. And definitely it was the time where people were not looking for upbeat music like Lipstick and Bruises.
Well, they also, most radio stations, went to comfort food. They would spend, post 9/11 for like that month, it would be like 2 songs per hour, and then the rest would be just taking phone calls on and just talking people, which it was necessary. People needed to talk about their feelings, and people needed to feel and hear other people sharing their stories. And just, it was really as unfortunate as that time was for new bands and bands like us that were trying to, keep it going, it was a kind of a beautiful time at, post 9/11, the way the country was so united and so together, and just so it's kind of like, there's definitely some good that came with it, but yeah, man, those were great records. That was a fun time.
Well, as I was complimenting AJ before, when I interviewed him, I admire how Lit did not quit. That after you walked away from RCA, you did the deal with DRT. The band never permanently went away. You did the indie thing, you did the country thing, you yourself writing music for video games, or at least playing on video games and doing independent projects that people don't necessarily know about. Did you know when you were walking away from RCA of like, oh, this is just a speed bump, we're in this for the next 20 to 30 years?
I don't know that we've ever put a time frame or a time limit on us. I think, it's funny because now when we're getting ready, we're putting this new record out. 20 minutes ago, I was on the phone with our lighting guy talking about the tricks we're going to pull out at the House of Blues Anaheim show. And we're just still excited and doing it. And it feels like it did 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But at the same time, I think we look at each other now, we're like, wow, I think maybe 10 years ago, we looked at each other, we're like, well, yeah, duh, what else would we be doing? And now we kind of look at each other like, wow, we're still doing it. It's pretty damn cool, because I don't know that if you would have asked me 30 years ago if I would still be doing this, but at the same time, I don't know what the hell else I would have been doing,
Yeah, you're on that short list of childhood friend bands that made it and stuck around. It's you guys, U2, the Chili Peppers, Clutch, not a lot of those bands.
Yeah, it's well, and yeah, it really is a brotherhood, and I think the foundation of our band is rooted in just the love for music. I mean, AJ and Kevin and I all met in junior high, and the reason that we met was because we all loved heavy metal and the rock and roll. It was like, Kevin was walking through the halls wearing a Van Halen shirt, and I was wearing an Iron Maiden shirt. We were like, hey, we should be friends because we like cool music, And we actually used to go to concerts together just as fans before we ever talked about playing music together, you know? So right. We just have that genuine love of music and love of concerts. And we still, I mean, any night of the week, like I'm watching live music. AJ's somewhere else watching some live music. Kevin's at some concert, like taking pictures. I mean, right. We're still like, you know, hardcore fans.
Well, when I interviewed Kevin a couple months ago, I told him that I was slowly writing a book about David Lee Roth, and he bestowed the information that you guys were Bill Gazzari's last "these guys are going to make it" band. Maybe you were 3 over after Odin. Maybe Odin was 2 before you. Yeah. But I mean, it was you guys, Rat, Van Halen. Those are the ones that Bill Gazzari said were going to make it.
Dude, it's funny you mentioned Odin. You know, Odin was one of my favorite bands. And biggest influences. And a lot of people aren't familiar with Odin, but AJ and I, when we were like 13 and 15, we went to every single Odin show. And
wow.
And they were the band I loved Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and, you know, Ozzy and Van Halen. And I would go to these concerts at, you know, arenas and just be in awe. But then, and our dad was a radio DJ and he worked in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he would drag us to work with him just because, you know, it was a Friday night and we were too old for a babysitter, but too young to be left at home on a Friday night.
Right.
And he would drag us to Hollywood to work with them. And then we would hop on a city bus and go up the street and go to the Roxy or the Whiskey or Gazzari's, and we would watch Odin. And they were the band that made me realize, like, oh, you can do this. Like you can do this on a smaller scale, like a local level. But anyways, Jeff Duncan to me is one of the best guitar players ever, and huge influence on me. And then the funny thing is, Randy O, the singer, him and I, just in the last like 3 or 4 years, have become really close friends. He moved out to Tennessee, and now you know, he comes over to the house and we grill, you know, cook steaks together, and just. I mean, it's a crazy small world, you know, and just a weird full circle thing that happens. But yeah, you opened that Odin door, and I ran in there with it.
Wow. You know, Odin just sticks in the back of my mind because in Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, that's one of the bands that Bill Gazzari says, these guys are going to make it. I think he says the line that Randy is foxier than David Lee Roth. that's one of the lines. And that's an awesome full circle thing, because a lot of the bands that you played with as a kid, they got a record deal 8 years later, like you guys did, and also stuck with it and found success writing for other artists, which again you did. So it's cool to see long-term success on your own terms, and you know, bring it back to Tastes Like Gold. If you have, I'm making up a number, 12 songs on the album, did you write 12 songs or did you write 40?
We definitely didn't write 40. We've never been in one of those bands. When we're making a lit record, we kind of produce ourselves as we're writing, and we generally don't finish something that we're not really stoked on. So if we're not loving something, we kind of just don't even bother with it, because it's sort of a waste of time and energy. And so we probably wrote maybe 16 or 17 songs for this record, and you know, the 12 that made it. But it was over the course of a year. You know, it was like during the lockdown when we were, you know, making this record, and it was kind of we were able to write it and then demo it in like little chunks of like 1 or 2 songs at a time. And we were able to like breathe in between and really like take our time and figure out like what else we wanted and what other vibes we wanted on the record, you know, because we knew from day one that we wanted it to sound like an old school lit record, but with just with a modern sound to it, you know, some modern bells and whistles and tricks, you know, but for the most part, we wanted it to sound like it could have come out around the same time as A Place in the Sun and Atomic.
Where do those leftover songs go if you don't finish them for a lit record?
In the past, you know, you would record a couple extras and you use them for a Japanese, right, you know, import or a European B-side or whatever.
Soundtrack.
I don't know. They live on my laptop or in my, a file folder somewhere. And every once in a while we'll go back and we'll go, whoa, hey, they don't ever die, but sometimes they'll get brought back and you'll dust them off and maybe rework them, or maybe you just go, what were we thinking? We should have put that on the record,
Well, 3 quick questions, and then I'm going to let you go. And the first one is mentioning David Lee Roth again for the 3rd time here. Any crossing paths with him over the years? Because, hey, let's face it, Orange County, you're not that far out of Los Angeles or Pasadena even.
We have crossed paths with him. There was something. Kevin's met him a couple more times than I have, but there is a couple of pictures. I think it's actually Ken would know. I think Ken has the picture, but we were backstage at some TV show or something, and maybe it was VH1 or something. Ken, you can chime in.
Kevin thought it was VH1. Yes, I asked Kevin.
So we do have a picture of us with Dave, and then I know Kevin's got a great picture of the 2 of them together. But I remember the one time I met him, he just, listen, there's no better frontman than David Lee Roth back in the day. I mean, shit. But when I met him, I just remember thinking like, whew, this guy has absolutely lost his fucking mind. But I love it. I mean, it's great. He was probably just as crazy, back in the heyday, but just talking to him, you're just like, oh, Jesus criminy.
Well, the response I generally get to that is, you're not talking to him, you're listening to him.
Yeah.
Second question here. I remember Lit had a restaurant bar, a couple of years ago, but are there any other projects or things that you pursue outside of Lit that I should know about, that we should know about?
Yeah, I mean, I owned the Slide Bar in Fullerton. It was for 15 years, and it was just a amazing experience to be. There's so many great bands played there, and so many great bands and musicians and celebrities visited there, and it became almost like it was kind of like the rainbow of Orange County, and it was just, you never knew who you were going to run into there or what band was going to play or whatever. And it was and families were made and marriages were made, and kids were had, and a lot of kids that were born and then grew up going there, and then called me Uncle Jeremy, and it was it was really an awesome, neat time. And now I'm just kind of enjoying. I guess I'm currently retired from the restaurant bar business, and it's kind of nice to be able to just focus on music right now. But we all are doing stuff, whether it's Kevin's obviously a killer photographer, and he's always shooting all kinds of stuff. We just kind of dabble, and you kind of need something to dive into in between the music, just to kind of keep things fresh. So.
Right. Well, the last question, I bothered AJ about this one too. I brought up Mullitron, which you had on the Atomic Tour come out during the shows. That was kind of like your Iron Maiden Eddie or your Vic Rattlehead of Megadeth. What are the odds from your perspective of Mullitron coming back in the future?
Well, it was a very expensive costume that was made for that video. And the last time I saw Mullitron, it was just the head and the torso, and it was way up in the corner of our storage unit out in California. It looks pretty banged up. I'm not sure that he's gonna. I think we had him come out at a House of Blues Anaheim show not that long ago, but I think Mullitron may not be recovering from this last round of abuse.
Well, it was fun to have him while you did, and congratulations on this new album. Looking forward to everything that's to come from Lit, and thank you for the many years of great music, Jeremy.
Hey, man, I appreciate you.
Paltrocast.